Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. She offers so much in the way of coaching, counseling, all different areas to support anybody going through some challenges, whether it's anger management, substance abuse, it could be a breach of trust in a situation or a relationship. Today, we're going to talk about, last time we got together, we talked about marriage and relationships. We're going to continue that riff of relationships and now talk about the dissolving of one, i.e. divorce. Everything that goes into it. How do you navigate? There's so many pieces to the puzzle, from assets, emotion, children, on and on and on. How do you unpack the divorce situation? Yvonne Lee joins us once again on the program. How you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks again for having me. I so enjoyed each one of these meetings.
I truly do as well, because you are grounded, genuine, insightful, and think of things or say things that the rest of us don't. We don't think about them. I don't know why. It's not on our radar, but I guess that's your training and your history. So today with divorce, where do we start with that?
Oh, gracious. Where do we start? And thank you for your kind words. You know, I think when thinking about divorce, the first thing we need to think about is the loss of it. Sometimes, depending on where you are in your level of maturity and your stage of life, sometimes you think of it as, well, that's it, I'm done. You know, I don't have to put up with that person anymore. I'm just over it. But there was a loss. You went into it with hopes. You went into it with dreams, goals. Most likely, even when you're young and unsure about what you're doing, you do believe that this is your forever person. We're going to be together. Everything is bright and rainbows and, chocolate chip cookies falling from the sky.
Sure.
And then, pop the dream. And it's not. That person is not who you thought they were. You don't mesh as well as you thought you did. And all the things you thought you would do together, come to find out, not so easily. Different goals, different priorities. So now you have to deal with the loss of who you were going to be with that person, what you were going to do together, what you thought you would grow. And that is a lot. There's a lot to deal with. And many people don't take the time to recognize that. So I would say that's stage one. Deal with the loss of it.
Yeah, let's center on stage one for a moment. There's so much going on there in terms of emotions, like you said, and it shouldn't be this way, but a lot of times you are connected to that person, and a lot of times you feel that you're you because of them. And wrong way to approach it, but many of us do it that way. Goes back to, what is it, Jerry Maguire? You complete me. Yeah. Don't ever say that. It's you compliment me. You compliment me.
Never.
So you have that. So it's almost like somebody, I equate it to a job. Like when you leave a job for whatever reason, many of us, our jobs are our identity. And now the job is gone, and now you feel lost. Like, who am I now? I got to figure this out. I got to invent me 2.0. So you have that aspect of the marriage, then the emotional part. Then there's the add other layers. Let's say that maybe cheating was involved, and now many times. And if I had to put a number on it, looking at everybody I know, life in general, I'd say usually like 70%. That person who was to be your life partner becomes your enemy in many, many different ways. Maybe not to that level, but how do you navigate?
If not your enemy, they become your nightmare, right? Because maybe I'm not even strong enough to hate you for my sake. And I do pause when I say that, because hate is such a strong word, but as it is the flip side of love, it is as powerful. So sometimes you're not even strong enough to hate somebody for your sake. All you can do is cry and deal with the pain, because they've become your nightmare now. You've taken away who I am, because if you believe it, you helped me become who I am. And without you, I don't know who I am. So you've stripped me of that. You're just lost. Now this person is lost in their journey. And if they're blessed to have family or friends able to tell them and support them that this is not about you, that this other person is seeking something. They weren't ready for this relationship anyway. This is their own issues that have hurt you, because hurt causes hurt. It's a constant. But if you're not, then you're dealing with it, you're wallowing in it. And too many times there's shame and guilt that goes along with that, especially if you have defied family or friends to be with this person.
Oof.
You do not want to admit that you were right. I don't want to say it. I don't want to admit it. So you'll stay by yourself. And in that place, it's dark and lonely and scary and hurtful. And you have to unpack all that pain. But how about another scenario when you have little humans? And you can't even manage your pain because you have to help them get through theirs. That is a whole other twist so many people don't deal with. You can either get lost in your pain so that you forget to help and honor and support your child through theirs, or both of you are lost in it and not strong enough to move through. It's so much that happens.
You're amazing. You really are. You think of every different angle that somebody might be dealing with. And you're right. This song was recorded back in the 1960s, redone in the 80s, and probably other versions I've never heard, but there's a thin line between love and hate. That's the song. And
Yeah, absolutely. You say
unless
it's true.
you don't realize it unless you're living it, because when it's love, yeah, it's great. Fantastic. You don't see how could there be a thin line between love and hate? Well, at some point you might realize that. Yeah. Many different emotions. One,
Yeah. Hope you don't. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're on I know you're in your car, and the Wi-Fi could be a little spotty, so I might have stepped on you. But the one I think that we forget is grief, loss. It's like the passing of somebody. It's the loss of a relationship, right?
Yes. And identity and your dreams and your goals and everything you thought you would be. It's more than just the moment. Even if you both have good careers and you're both saving your money, of separate checking accounts, all of those things, you still thought you were growing together. So if you manage to have a very independent life, I'm doing me, you're doing you're growing separately, the separation might not be as emotional, but you still have to unpack. Right? You still have to deal with separation of assets. You still have to deal with who is the children going to stay with? Will that be holidays? Will that be just during the school year or summer times, and communication? And I know I had a client who their judge had instructed them to get a mediator, somebody to help them. And I was blessed to partner with them. And one of the things, surprisingly, that kind of the first thing I had to remind them of was, you're each listening to your lawyer and taking things personal. I said, remember, your lawyer has a job to do. Their job is to win in court for you. That's it. They'll laugh and go to lunch after. You're absorbing what the lawyer is doing. Don't forget who you were to each other and take control back. Remember, it's about your child that you once admired each other. And I made them talk about it. I helped them. I didn't make them. I helped them to remember why they chose that other person. And each of them eventually said, he is a great father. She was a great mother. And that tore down so many barriers, because they each also said, but in court, your lawyer said such and such. It was like, yeah, but I didn't want the lawyer to say that. That's just what they're doing. And when they remembered that the lawyer's just doing the job and it's about who you were together, you don't have to be so angry, then the discussion changed. And I said, now when you go back and you meet, take power over what you want in this unpacking, and put your voice through. You can lose your voice in that unwrapping if you're not careful. Don't forget, you once were everything to that other person. Sometimes that hate makes you forget that that's the same person you once loved so much. We lose that sometimes in
Completely.
divorces.
Yeah, especially when you're going down that road, you forget the rear view, what you had. Now you're just looking at the present and the future. And not all attorneys are like this, but it needs to be stated, I feel, that your attorney has a job, and part of his job is to get compensated, and part of that is to make more. So many times attorneys will fire up the client. It's almost like you know,
Yeah.
Rocky, the battle in the ring, and you have the
Mhm.
coach, Burgess Meredith, coming over. Come on, you got him. Yeah,
Absolutely.
don't let them do that to him. What does that mean? That means more money for the attorney. I'm not saying all attorneys, but it exists, and we need to
Absolutely.
be aware of keep it in check. Like, why is they saying that to me? I just want to get this over with. Um, you said before, and I completely agree with it. And I
Yeah.
want to make sure I heard it right too. Hurt hurts. People who are hurt other people. They may not be realizing it, they may not understand it, but unless you've figured out what makes you operate, you might not even know. And yes, a relationship takes two,
Right.
but somebody might be hurting the other person, and then that eventually leads to divorce. But they don't even know they're doing it. They don't realize it.
Or they would call it defensiveness, right? Or they'd call
Mm,
it just protecting myself. So I don't believe they would term it to say that, yes, I chose to, I've purposed to cause pain to this person. I don't know anybody, unless of course we're dealing with a sociopath, a narcissistic person of some level, but that's not where we're going to go to. And just everyday relationships with the most common person, they are not purposing to be malicious or hurtful, but if you say something and rip open a wound, a lot of people are carrying scabs that are not healed. And not healed for many reasons, because they haven't gotten an apology, because they haven't grieved, because they haven't processed whatever it is. And then you say something or you do something that reminds them, that rips that scab you didn't even know was there. And now they're defensive or they're in protection mode. And it's all about just keeping themselves intact. They would not say, I'm hurting you. They'd say, you're hurting me and I'm just protecting me.
mm.
It's a shame, but it happens very often. Another reason why, as we talked in the last session, you need to pause between relationships, heal. Have you dealt with whatever issues came up? Have you dealt with maybe the hurtful things that person did to you? Heal before you start a new relationship, or at the very least, be honest in that new relationship. I'm dealing with some things. There might be tendencies when I can act this way. Be honest about what you need. Like when I get upset, please don't press me. That I'm not the right person for that. Give me space. I
Mm,
will come back.
sure.
But again, communication, knowing each other, and giving a space where people can express themselves or deal with what their issues are without pushing you away. You have to learn each other. It's a process, starting and ending.
I want to get into children connected to divorce, but before we even get there,
Yeah.
what about if you're in a relationship, you're married, and things are not feeling right, and you're maybe on the fence of deciding what direction to go? Where do you go with that?
Mhm. Again, I would definitely say counseling, because that's who I am.
100%.
And mostly because you need somebody who's going to talk to you about what is wrong. Where are the non-negotiables here? How are you not being supported? Where are you feeling like the other person doesn't see you, right? Because you need to unpack those things. Where are you feeling this hurt, this pain? Why are you no longer feeling like this is my safe place, my love space with this person? What's changing? And give opportunity to talk about that. Sometimes it's just a matter of we're growing apart. Okay, but you can come back together. There's change and that's development. You've been together 8 to 10 years or more. Yes, you've grown as a person. Hopefully, you've been learning new things and your career is growing. It's certainly possible that you're not the same person. And for some partners, spouses, it is very uncomfortable for them to adjust to who their partner is now. Like, well, you used to do this with me, but now you don't. Or we used to be comfortable in the house. Now you want to go out to, the bar or to a jazz club. And we never did that before. Right.
Think we had a freeze on the Wi-Fi. Come
The
back.
socialism made you realize you enjoy getting out.
I got most of that. It
Oh,
just
so
froze for
sorry.
just a second. I'm sorry. Can you hear us?
No, that's not on you. I apologize.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I
I was
get
saying
okay.
people grow and change. People grow and change, grow together. Then you might not even realize that the person didn't stop loving you. You just kind of changed. You got to learn each other again. So that's what
Mm,
dating is for. Date each other again. Let's get to know each other again. Spend time. That person is still there. It's just scary because they want to do things or not do things that you're used to. And that's another thing, right? About relationships, people not giving you a space to grow. That can be something that leads to divorce too. You can't stifle me because you're comfortable with who I was. I'm growing, I'm maturing, I'm changing. I still want you, but you can't tell me that I can't become whoever it is I'm turning into. That leads to divorce too sometimes, just an unwillingness to allow. And that's
that's
necessary.
that's a great point. Um, and divorce, children involved.
Yeah.
How do you navigate through that? I'm not even sure where to begin. I mean, right down to telling your
Oh,
kids, right?
absolutely. I guess that's the first space. I think sometimes people do it out of order. When you start trying to have separate lives, you start trying to separate and you haven't spoken to the kids. Here's the truth. Kids are very sensitive to what's happening with their parents. They are so connected to us. They are so aware of our emotions and feelings. You might think you're hiding it, that the child doesn't know we're being quiet, we're not arguing in front of them. That child has already realized that the touching has changed, the laughter has changed. Kids are very sensitive. And when you don't speak to them, you leave their mind to come up with the answers. And children never come up with the right answers, and they will almost always blame themselves for what's happening. It must be because I'm doing this. Daddy doesn't care, mom doesn't care, whomever. You leave them in a space where they have to come up with their own answers. And that is never good for an adult, but especially not for a child. Don't leave that person, especially that baby, to come up with their own answers. They're going to blame themselves and they're going to get it wrong. So, like you
Mm.
said, first space, let's tell you. Let's tell you what's happening and reassure you that we still love you, that you're still going to have both of us. When you go off with your life and think the child will just adjust, then you've tended to you. You haven't tended to the divorce. And that's more running away than divorcing. You know,
Mhm.
divorcing is an unpacking. It's a let's unravel this, let's deal with it, let's process, let's talk it through. But if you leave, go get another place, you go on with your life, you zip right into the next thing, then that's kind of running away. You've just decided you want something else, and that's harmful.
Mm.
And again, the children are left to kind of come up with their own answers, or left with the parent who's still there, but now they're angry and will probably blame the only one that's there to deal with their anger and their hurt and their fear and confusion. And now that family is in trauma and crisis because everything's changed and nobody's talking. So it's
Ye-
that
the-
communication.
I feel the one thing many times that parents don't realize that children, let's call it over the age of 7 or 8 and on
Mm-hmm.
up, they know what's going on. They already detected mom and dad are different. They're not the same. There's something going on here. You might not, as
Mm-hmm.
a kid, might not be able to put your finger on it, but you know something's up.
Right. Yep. You know, it's not telling them is not protecting them.
Right.
That's a falsehood that you are most likely telling yourself because it's easier. Well, I was protecting you. I didn't want to know. I didn't know how to. Find out how. And if you really are struggling to talk with them, go find somebody to talk with them. There are counselors in schools. There are counselors such as myself. There are people at church. And if you're just not there, again, a professional person then who can kind of help you with that. There's something we need to talk about. And I can help you create that safe space, find some alternative words maybe. And perhaps the reason you need help is because you don't know how to talk about the absent parent in a healthy way. And I don't
Hmm.
want you to do that. I can say, why don't you step away for a moment while your son or daughter and I kind of talk about what just happened? And then you come back in here and we'll continue. But if you're not strong enough to do that with that child, to allow them to process because your emotion is all there, then please don't do it by yourself.
Hmm.
Please don't. Have somebody else with you because they can't deal with your pain and theirs. And it's not fair to ask them to.
And I guess it needs to be said, but don't badmouth the other parent. I know you want to.
Mhm. So,
It's just it's a recipe for disaster, and the recipe for them, it backfires. You're you're
always.
you're you are putting down the other person in their life, the only other person that they love to the highest level, regardless of what's going on. It's going to bite you in the butt. Um, let's talk about the other part that we unpack here with divorce: assets. That whole
Mm.
situation can turn into a firestorm. Uh,
Oh.
thoughts on that? Initial thoughts?
You know, I was not a person who had to deal with prenuptial agreements, but I do understand them. I understand if you have assets, if you have property, even if it's just ideas that you do have a right to them. And it's important to be honest about what you're bringing. It's important to be honest. Say if you're coming into this marriage and the other person has several kids, and maybe you only have one kid, we're going to leave the house to the kids, but you have four and I have one. How does that work in your favor, right? So being honest about what we come with and how we're going to divide it, have those discussions, even if, well, I don't want to talk about that. We're never divorcing. We love each other, right? That sounds lovely, but life happens. So let's talk about what we each are bringing in, and let's talk about, especially if you plan to have children or just want to have an estate and acknowledge what you leave to your family. Have honest discussion about that. Get a
Hmm.
lawyer if you need to, but have honest discussion about what I bring and what I'm leaving, and how many children we have. Yes, you are together. But if you have, again, as I said, if you have four children and I have one, then equal division isn't equal. So let's talk about how this is going to be split up. That is about honest discussion. And again, if you're
Hmm.
not able to do that, if you feel like you're going to have jealous feelings or possessive feelings, then get a third person who you can sit and honestly talk, and it can help you discuss it in a healthy way without giving into the emotions. It's natural. And you should know what you're leaving behind, and better to do it before hurt and anger become a
Yeah.
part of it.
And I've heard this from a number of divorce attorneys, including friends who are going through divorce. And the
Mhm.
attorneys, from what I detect, are very fair, diplomatic. They're just trying to make things work. Um, and they
Mhm.
all say, no matter what happens, whether you spend a boatload of money or you spend a little bit of money in terms of legal representation, in the end, dividing up the assets and negotiating and all of that, it's usually within 7%, whether you spend a ton or
Yeah.
you spent a little. So
Mhm.
the moral is if you're battling, you're wasting your money and your energy and your time for not. Your kids could have that money.
No, for not exactly so. And and another thing is also the people that you're around. It's not helpful, whether in the relationship or coming out of the relationship, to have people in your life who want to be on your side. And I've said this numerous amount of times. Even if my husband and I got into a horrible argument, you cannot be on my side against my husband. That's my other half. To be against him is to be against me. You have to either be on the side of our marriage or out of it altogether. So whether you are beginning or ending, having people around you, I know they think they're helping, but do not come in bringing more pain than what those people are already dealing with, what that couple's already dealing with. Be there for them. And that means recognizing and being honest. Well, you chose this person, the good and the bad of it. And if it was too soon, or if you were not ready, then be their friend and say that you knew this was coming. This was not the right relationship for you. So don't be angry. Let's
Hmm.
just deal with it and come out of it with the same maturity that we went into it, or hopefully even more, and remember that the children are just dealing with the grown-ups' choices. So be honest with them. Children will come up to their own answers. And you mentioned like 7 years and older, but even young children, even toddlers know when you're off, even when you hug them. They just can't voice it, and they'll heal quicker because they probably won't remember as much. But either way, don't cause more pain than necessary. And for me, that's my goal. I want to help you not have more pain. I want to help you to heal. Everybody in your life should be helping with that part.
I said, and thank you for that. And I said 7 and above because they're more cognizant, but you're 1,000,000,000% right. And you can look at the research. Babies in the womb, when there's something
Yes.
going on, pick up, feel, energy, emotion, all of that. Yes. Thank you for today. The topic that needed to be explored. And I love your genuineness, and you truly keep it real. You tell it like it is, but with love. It is your superpower. How do we find you, Yvonne?
Well, you can find me on my website, candspg.com, or on Facebook, Counseling and Shifting Perspectives, or on Google. I'm a lot of places, and I'll soon be on YouTube, but because that's my perspective. That's coming soon too.
I love it. Thank you so much for today. Appreciate you and everything you offered to us, and looking forward next time we get together.
Absolutely. Me too. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.